Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody here this morning. Everybody looks like they're doing quite well. And it's nice also to see you who are joining us online. Glad to have you with us. And just remember that we'd like to hear from you, your prayer requests, and any questions that you might have concerning our study time. Love for you to share that with us. We do want to take the time to open with prayer, and I'm going to invite you just to go ahead and bow your heads with me. Father in heaven, we want to thank you and praise you for who you are, and you do take such wonderful care of your children. Help us never to take for granted all the many blessings that come our way. Help us to be more sensitive to the way that you're working in our lives and on our hearts. We truly desire to want to follow you more fervently. We want to bring glory and honor to your holy name. So Lord, work in our lives as never before. Strengthen us as we take time to study. It's important for us to open your word, to gain insight and understanding. We know that only comes from the Holy Spirit. And so please come and teach us. Open our hearts and minds to your word, that we might be filled with just what we need to be an encouragement to others and to fulfill your will in our lives. I want to thank you for everyone here. We want to thank you, Lord, for those who are watching online. We do pray a blessing on each person, each family. And we do ask and pray, Lord, that you will continue to use us in the finishing of your great work. Things are happening very quickly. Events are taking place at lightning speed. Help us to be aware and help us, Lord, to accomplish your will. This is our prayer. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I want to also let folks know we don't take usually the time here to bring up all of our prayer requests, but during the week we hear about folks that are maybe in the hospital or sick or dealing with some health challenge. And so we are journaling. We're going to journal those and trust the Lord to take care of those kind of situations. We know that folks that are here, they have relatives and friends that we're all praying for one reason or another. And we just want to let you know, folks here already know, but out there, we want to let you know we believe in prayer. We believe prayer changes things. We believe it unlocks opportunities for God to work in our lives as never before. So, if you're not utilizing that tool as you should, we want to encourage you to do that because we very much believe in it. Okay, we picking up our Bible study reading, chapter 10 of Exodus. And we've been talking about, of course, the plagues, haven't we? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, one of the things that's impressed me as I've been reading through here is that you would think after you get through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plagues, that kind of thing, that Pharaoh would start to get the message. I mean, even though, you're a proud, egotistical ruler, even though you're kind of a dictator, you would think that even after a number of plagues, you would still get through to somebody that's extremely hard-headed. But as we read on, we'll see that it takes more and more for God to reach him. And so we're going to pick up our reading in chapter 10, verse 21. And if you have a question or comment, just go ahead and jump in there. Okay, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. We've read that, talked about that concept a number of times already. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt. Even darkness which may be felt. Now, what does he mean by that?
It's very dark.
Even darkness that may be felt.
Well, not only that, but in most cases the eyes will adjust to where you can see something. But this darkness was so dark that if you put your hand to your nose, you couldn't even see your hand. That's how dark it was. It's just like black paint.
You ever get inside a cave where there's no light at all? That's probably what it was.
I remember. And you know, that means to me that it had to be something other than natural phenomena that was causing that. Because I remember we were in a cave one time in Colorado, Rose and I, and we're down in the heart of the cave, and of course, you know, you got lights all through it. And the tour guide, he said, "Now I want you to stop where you are, stand perfectly still." He said, "I'm going to turn the lights out because I want you to experience what real darkness is." He said, "I want you to put your thumb on your nose like this." And he said, "I want you to wiggle your fingers." And he said, "I'm going to turn the lights out." And we did that, and he turned the lights out, and you could not see your fingers in front of your nose, in front of your eyes there. You could not see them. It was so dark. And it's the absence of light. Now, do you think that's what they were experiencing here?
Sure. Said that they couldn't even move.
Yeah. I mean,
So dark they couldn't even move.
That's what it was. They had no light period, and they weren't able to do anything. It just set.
Yeah. Well, he calls it in the next verse, he calls it a thick darkness. Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days.
Let me stop a minute now. You got all these nations all the way around Egypt. All these nations. Then you got Goshen there that is in Egypt. But the only place that is dark and black is this one area. What do you think these people, as they walked around and they looked at this place and this big ball of darkness just in this one area?
Yeah. Well, when I hear this concept of thick darkness and the idea that it's felt, I know that, for example, if God had dropped a cloud down, I was surprised just yesterday when we had a rainstorm here. It was in the evening, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Normally it's still real bright outside, sun's still up, but it was really dark,
like
really
sunset,
dark
yeah.
outside. Okay, it was definitely like sunset.
Yeah.
Very, very dark, and I was surprised at that, you know. But I mean, I could still obviously see to get around and so forth. But if God had set a cloud, just a dark cloud, dropped it right over top of them, which would increase the humidity. I mean, you could even feel that.
I think that's what they was feeling.
If it was thick, you know, it feels like if you're in a cloud, it'd be like walking through soup almost, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, supernatural event to be sure. It says they saw one another. Neither rose any from his place for 3 days. So wow, this isolated everyone.
That there was really, you get a feeling on that. 3 days.
But as Larry pointed out, all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. So, and Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, "Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you." And Moses said, "Thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not a hoof be left behind, and thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God. And we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come hither, until we get there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Pharaoh said unto him, "Get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more. For in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die." And Moses said, "What? You've spoken well, yet I will see your face again no more." So we'll stop it right there.
I hear the words coming out of your mouth, but I don't believe you.
Yeah, we'll stop it right there because
But
there's yet one plague left, right?
But Pharaoh actually pronounced
This is,
the last plague on himself.
Yeah. He pushed God to that place, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He pushed God.
Well, Moses, he's seen God, but he only seen a glimpse of his back, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
He couldn't look at his face
Sure.
and live.
Right. So, anyway, Pharaoh was kind of pronouncing his own death sentence there, whether he realized it or not, which is unfortunate because a couple 100,000 people died at the Red Sea, he being one of them. And, that's just
Did he die at the Red? Did he go into the Red Sea, or did he just swim?
He probably went
Yes.
partial way in, yeah. Yeah, he
You
died
think
there.
he did?
He died there also.
He died there also. I thought he was stood on the bank and watched it.
No, I think that he wanted to set. I think his men were a bit apprehensive after following, after the cloud of fire, the pillar of fire had stopped them, and then of course the waters parted open, and they start. He commands them to go down in there. I'm sure. I think there's a little bit of apprehension, so I think he wanted to set the right example and lead. So, we're told Josephus, as well as other sources, tell us that he died at the Red Sea.
How far did they go to get across?
5 miles.
The crossing there is about 8 miles across, maybe 8.5 miles, and so they were probably down in the middle, most of them, when when Moses stretched out his hand and the waters came back. So, actually, the way that happened, and we can talk about it later, but just since you brought it up, when God blew the wind through the sea, it caused the sides to congeal. That's what the Bible says. The waters congealed. Now, what does that mean? What's that word mean?
Stood still.
Right, a liquid turned into a solid. Okay, so when you blow air through water, it will turn the water to ice. So you've got the sides, and it's about a half mile wide. And if you're crossing at night, you really can't see, the enormity of what's there. But God prevented the Egyptian army from going into the sea until it started to get toward daybreak. And of course, the sun is coming up, and the sun is going to strike the point of origin first, the Egyptian side, and start to melt the ice on that side. Once that starts to break free, you're going to have all that water kind of funnel. You're going to have that water coming in, but it's going to be coming in and going this way, like through a tube, and it's going to push the army over onto the shore where the Israelites are. And what happens after daybreak and everything's all over with? What did the Israelites do?
Miriam leads them in the song.
They go down to the beach. This water has pushed all these soldiers with their weapons up onto the beach, and God provides all the weaponry for the Israelite army in that event as well. See, people don't recognize all the things that were taking place there, but God was providing in so many ways. He was birthing a new nation. He was providing for their army. I mean, just everything. He was eliminating their enemy. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. And it's because of the way it happened that reveals all of those potential things. So we'll talk
baptism by immersion.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more as we get to the story. Okay. All right. Let's go through our lesson today. And one hardly can talk about eschatology or last day events without focusing quite a bit on the book of Daniel. And we've talked about the book of Daniel in the past a little bit. I don't know if we've actually streamed any of our presentations on that since we've been meeting here for over a year. But there's one particular thing that we want to talk about, and that is the meaning of this word here. You see, when folks decide to study about end time events, usually, what's the motive? They want to know
when the end is going.
When the end is going to come. When is Jesus going to come? If you look back through history, you'll find that there have been numerous predictions that Jesus is going to come at a certain time. You know, the second coming of Christ has been the promise that's always been out there. And so Jesus is going to come at a certain time. And so people dig into their prophecies. They look at the end time prophecies, hoping to get some kind of idea when Jesus is going to come. Okay? But now we've already talked a little bit about the end time chronology, and just for the sake of simplicity, we've got this event here is of more significance than even the second coming. Okay? It may sound a bit odd to some people, but you've got on this side you have plagues, right? And then you have the second coming here, after the plagues. Okay, what do you have back here?
Trumpets.
You got trumpets over here. Okay, so God's mercy is still lingering here. Once probation closes, he that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is righteous, let him be righteous still. Once that declaration is made, when probation closes, then the full wrath of God is poured out without mercy, which are the plagues. And you got, of course, 7 last plagues here, and you got 7 trumpets over here. Okay. Now, again, when most people look at end time prophecy, they're trying to think of when is this going to happen. And you've even heard people, I think even a few years back, you had Howard Camping, his name comes to mind, Harold Camping, talking about, Jesus is going to come at a certain time, a certain day. Right? And I think that he had predicted several dates in his career, in his radio ministry. But of course that day came and went. He didn't come, right? What would be a better thing to look for, instead of trying to pinpoint a particular time when Christ would come, what would be a better motive in terms of studying end-time prophecy? What would be probably more beneficial is to look for a sequence of events.
Road signs.
Okay, a sequence of events that would actually pretty much lead us to this time here. Okay, now no one is going to. You have to understand. This particular event will be announced. You realize that? Before Christ comes, he will announce the time that he's going to come. Just like if you ever watch a State of the Union address. The president comes to the doorway, and somebody comes out before him, and what do? Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Such and such and such and such a person, the president of the United States. They announce his appearance, okay, at the State of the Union. That's kind of what will happen here at the second coming. This event, the close of probation, is the Father's prerogative only. Okay, the Bible says no one knoweth the day or the hour. Okay, even though we can look at a blueprint, and even though the blueprint will suggest a time when probation will close, what does Scripture tell us? God is going to shorten that. He's going to cut it short. It's His prerogative to close probation when He knows the moment is right. Okay, and so He will do that. No one will take that from the Father. That's His initiative alone. Just like back with the ark, it was the Father alone who closes the door. Okay, no one's going to close the door. No human is going to close the door. It's God that closes the door. Okay, so nobody's going to take that prerogative from Him. But what we can do is we can look at a series of events that will help us to be better prepared for this event here. This is really the event that we need to be preparing for, right there. Okay? Close of probationary time.
And why should we be looking for that, being prepared for it?
Because
what's the importance of
that
that?
time, there is no being saved.
That's it.
Well, now, also remember this too. During the trumpets, the Christians are persecuted. During the plagues, the wicked are persecuted. So we want to see this. We want to see this close of probation.
Yeah, it's people try to again. What most people are doing that understand the idea of looking for a series of events They're trying to more or less understand what is going on back here. What's taking place here? Okay. The trumpets start with, the first 4 trumpets start with natural disasters, as we talked about before. The last 3 are woes, and they're supernaturally initiated. Okay. And once you get to this place where the enemy knows, hey, I still have people alive that are honoring God, honoring the God of heaven. I can't allow that because his existence is at stake. So he cannot allow any person to be alive when this event occurs. He doesn't know when that's going to occur either. Okay, but he knows that he knows the schedule, he knows the blueprint, and he knows that he has a short time.
But he knows no more than we know.
Right. Okay. So we need to look for a series of things. One of the things in Daniel that helps us to understand the series is the taking away of the daily. Let me take you to that and we'll look at it. This is in Daniel chapter 8. All right. And again, we're trying to sort out, when these things are supposed to be. But in Daniel chapter 8, I'm just going to start at verse 11 there. It says, he even exalted himself, and himself is a supplied word, as high as the prince of the host. And who's the prince of the host?
Christ.
That would be Christ, right? And by him, the he, not the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices is a supplied word, were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth to the ground, and he did all this and prospered. And if you read down a little further, it says, and I heard one holy person speaking to another, basically asking the question, how long will be the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation? And they're usually always tied together, right? The taking away of the daily and the transgression of desolation. The giving of both the sanctuary, number 1, and the host, God's people, to be trampled underfoot. Right? So I want you to understand the context here. Let's just look at the words. Let's not try to interpret what's here because of a past study. But let's just look at what it's saying here. Okay? God's people in the sanctuary are going to be trampled underfoot. Now, what do you think that means? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing?
Negative.
That's a negative thing, right? That means devastation. That means maybe imprisonment. That means restriction. That means all kinds of things that would be negative. All right? So here, God's people in the sanctuary are going to go through this very negative experience. How long is that going to last? Okay, what does it say here? How long will be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And this being says to him, for 2,300 days then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So, what does that say? What does that say?
Well, it gives you a starting point, then it gives you a time period of how long.
Okay. So, the sanctuary and God's people are going to be in a very negative, desperate situation. Okay? And that's going to start at one place, and it's going to last for 2,300 days, and then it's going to come to an end. Is that the way you read it? That's what it's saying, right? Okay. So, what we need to be looking at...
Is that counting the falling away too?
You're talking about the falling away before the great and terrible day of the Lord, kind of thing. And
that won't be up until the next close of probation.
Yeah. What we're dealing with here is difficult, negative time for the sanctuary and God's people.
We got to look at the whole world when we doing this, right?
Right.
When you got the Christians being persecuted and they're running like everything all over the Middle East and trying to get into other countries, according to the news right now.
Right now, that's true. Okay. See, you have to remember this event right here, closing probation. This is when we think back of the flood. Know the story of Noah. What did God really do there at the flood? He has Noah build this ship. He's going to invite everybody to get on the boat over the course of the time that they're working on it. But ultimately, how many people end up getting on?
8.
Okay, 8 people get on the boat. So now, and then God closes the door. So what has He actually done there? God has separated the righteous from the wicked. Okay?
It was
And
the
then-
probation for them.
Right, and then the flood comes, and the wicked are washed away. That's the washed away in condemnation, right? And the ones inside Noah, they're the ones that are left. That word is ephemi. It means they're forgiven. Okay, so paralambano is the word used in the Greek for those that are swept away in condemnation. So the ones taken away in condemnation are the ones that are destroyed, and the ones that are left are the ones that are forgiven. That's what modern Christianity does. What evangelicals do today is they reverse that. They say to be taken is to be taken to heaven, and to be left is to be given a second chance or a third chance. Okay? They flip it around. And actually the story shows that the ones that are taken in condemnation by the flood, and the ones that are left are Noah and his family. Okay? And so that kind of destroys the whole basic concept of the secret rapture. Because if you're taken in condemnation. The word's paralambano. Taken in condemnation. But at any rate, who's taking away this daily? What is the daily? Who's taking it away? You know, historically, when William Miller started going through these prophecies, Daniel chapter 8 and the taking away of the daily and the setting up the abomination of the desolation was all present truth for them. Why? Because they believed that this earth was the sanctuary, and when the end of that period came, that the sanctuary was going to be cleansed, meant that Christ was going to come. So then they started to go back in history and find out when this daily had been taken away, when this time period began. Okay? And then they utilized the year-day principle, right? They didn't say, well, wait a minute, this is not 2300 evening mornings, as the scripture reads, but it's 2300 years. Okay? So they used some exegetical principles of interpretation.
Which was correct.
Which was correct. Okay? I have no problem with that. But what happens is when we go through, what happened in 1844, which would have been the end, the termination of that 2300 years, and they had this expectation that the Lord was going to come, right? Because this earth was the sanctuary, this was God's footstool, and this was going to be cleansed. And of course there's a lot of nonsense going on down here, and it needed to be cleansed, and so you can see why they would be thinking this. And that was the typical thinking of the day.
Sweeten her mouth and
typical thinking of the day.
Later.
Right. It was a glorious message because there they were, right there. It was present reality for them. They were within a couple of years, right, of possibly experiencing the Lord's return. So they're excited about that. And it went all around the world. It was a great awakening and a great revival around the world, right? But what happens is when we read stuff like that, what we end up doing is we play the either-or game. Who knows what I mean by that?
Well, yes,
What I
that's
mean-
just the way they understood it when they were studying.
Yes. What do I mean by the either-or game? Right? You understand that? Either or. What do I mean by that? In other words, the 2300 listed there, we can look back in history and we can see an application made that's 2300 years. However, could we also look at what's there and see that it is indeed also 2300 days?
I mean,
Is that a possibility?
Sure.
Okay. Now, why In other words, instead of saying
Then if
it's
we
days
said
or years, what are you saying? Instead of
that,
saying
it's
years,
both.
we're saying both. It can be both.
But my question is, if it was 2,300 days, it had to be significant. So what happened at the end of 2,300 days?
Well, nothing back in the 1800s.
But we're looking at not 2,300 years, but 2,300 days. And if we're saying that we can apply this to both,
Both, right?
I want to know at the end of 2,300 days what happened.
Okay,
Isn't that the restoration of Jerusalem? Or the temple?
that's right. In other words, at the end of 2,300 days, at the end of 2,300 days, what does Scripture say? The sanctuary shall be cleansed. Okay, so there's what has been a negative. Once that time expires, now turns to a positive for God's people.
So the 2,300 days
Yes.
with the sanctuary, earthly sanctuary being cleaned. 2,300 years is the heavenly sanctuary being cleared. Am I correct?
Well, there is no earthly sanctuary
But it was back then.
per se. There was back in Jewish
But
history.
that's what we're talking about, 2,300 days from 538.
Okay. What I want to suggest to you,
Okay.
and again, remember we're talking about eschatology. We're talking about end time events. Okay. What I want to suggest to you is that Daniel chapter 8, without a question, okay, without a question, even somebody who has no religious interest, if they just read that chapter, they're going to come to a conclusion that these events are dealing with the end of time. Okay. Now,
Okay, now,
Well,
just
well,
don't run off and leave me
I'm
here.
not going to leave you hanging.
All right.
But what I want you to understand is that the reason I'm saying that this has a dual application to present reality. Present reality for William Miller was the year-day principle. Okay, that was his day. Heavenly sanctuary was being cleansed. Christ was moving from the holy place to the most holy. Significant event. Okay, applicable. All right. But also, when you come down to our day and the end of time, right? We don't have 2,300 years to play with, do we? But we certainly would have 2,300 days to play with. Okay. Now watch this. Here comes. You got to remember, Daniel's
wait a minute
Daniel's
now.
reading this.
Are we starting at both periods from the same date of 538?
No, and
Okay.
it's not 538. It was it was
457.
457 BC that they determined and brought them up to 1843 and then 1844.
1844 from there to
457 BC, coming up first to 490 years, bringing them to 34 AD, then another 1810, etc. to 1844. That's what the Millerites were very scholarly in their assessment of determining the time periods and so forth. And and from what I've studied, they were quite accurate in their determination. I mean, they based it on new moon sightings and different things as well. They checked, everything was taken into consideration.
what does indignation mean?
What does indignation mean? Anger, wrath. In fact, Kenny, I'm glad you brought that word up because the original word, you have to remember the book of Daniel is interesting. It's unique in itself. The first chapter is written in Hebrew. Chapters 2 to 7 are written in Aramaic. And then in chapter 8 it goes back to Hebrew. Okay? So so some of it's written in Hebrew, some of it in Aramaic, that kind of thing. When you look at the original word there, indignation, it gives the impression, of course it's anger and wrath, the way we'd summarize it, but it's so severe that it indicates a foaming at the mouth. Somebody is so angry, they're foaming at the mouth like a wild animal. Like an animal that's rabid. Okay, that's the kind of picture that word is painting there. A rabid animal, foaming at the mouth, snarling. Okay. Now, who does that describe? You know, that indignation that's occurring, that anger and that wrath is coming from who? Coming from the enemy of God. Okay, and that should your mind should jump to the book of Revelation in chapter 12. And what verse? So the dragon was wrath, you know,
or angry.
wroth with the woman, and went to make. Well, wroth means the same thing. He was enraged. He was enraged. He was snarling. He was rabid. Went to make war with the saints. Okay.
Or the remnant of her seed.
The remnant. So, what I want to share with you in chapter 8 here, when it comes to the daily, the taking away of the daily, we're going to talk about that specifically. You know, who took the daily away? What is the daily? You know, and this is something that people have been looking at for a long time, and I don't know if I've seen any real consensus on that.
Sacrifice,
Yeah, but what I want to point out first in chapter 8 is look at verse 15. Daniel has this vision, right? Chapter 8 is chapter 7 and chapter 8 are visions that Daniel has, right? And chapter 8, of course, is the ram and the he-goat. And the ram is, historically, we apply the ram to be Medo-Persia, and the he-goat, Alexander the Great. Okay? So, look at the interpretation, though. Verse 15, it says, "It happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning." Now, this is irrelevant. This is relevant because what does that tell you right away? He doesn't understand this vision that he's just had. So he's looking outside of himself, right? Now, if you remember back all the way in chapter 2 of Daniel, remember Daniel interprets Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Okay? Remember, and what does Nebuchadnezzar's dream consist of in summary? What did Nebuchadnezzar see?
The statue.
He saw the huge statue, right? And we had the head of gold, and the shoulders of silver, and the belly of brass, and the legs of iron, and then partly iron, partly clay feet. What happened in chapter 2? Where does it go after that? What happens after that? A stone is cut out of a mountain without hands and crashes into the base and crumbles all that down. And what happens then? God sets up His kingdom. Okay, so Daniel already has an experience where God has revealed to him elements of world history going back 2,600 years. Okay, the Babylonian Empire was about 600 BC. And of course, Daniel sees these successive empires coming and going. Right? And he goes all the way to the end. All the way to the end where Christ is setting up His kingdom. So he sees 2600 years of history, all the way up to the very end, before Christ, just as Christ is also coming. So he sees it all. Now, here he gets to his visions, and what's his assessment? I don't understand. In fact, it's not only I don't understand. If you go back to chapter 7, in verse 15, chapter 7, it says, "I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me."
And
he was troubled.
He was sick.
He was sick. He was troubled. "I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of this." He's looking for explanation. Now, if he already has an experiential understanding of world history, and he knows we got Babylon, that's the head of gold, we got Medo-Persia, that's the shoulders, we got Greece, that's the belly, we got Rome, that's the legs, we got Rome divided. He's already gone through that whole history lesson. But when he gets to his visions in chapters 7 and 8, he's like, man, what does that mean? Wow, that's incredible. So there's something else going on here. So, in fact, at the end, the last verse of chapter 7 says, "This is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me. My countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart." He doesn't understand what these things mean. Right? What does God eventually tell him?
Daniel,
in chapter 12?
close up the book.
This isn't for you, Daniel. This isn't for you. Okay, this is for the
Down the
end.
road.
This is for the end. Right? Now, when you get to chapter 8, God starts to clue Daniel into that fact that all of this that he's seeing now is for different time. It's for the latter time. And who does he send? He sends Gabriel. Now, can we trust Gabriel? Who's Gabriel?
This one standing next to Christ.
He's right next to the throne of God. Right? And so Daniel was seeking the meaning, it says there in verse 15. And suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. Right? So he came near to where I stood, and when he came I was afraid, fell on my face. And he said to me, understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. The time of the end. Now, different people have, of course, different interpretations of when the time of the end is. And it's relative to the context in which you're trying to identify. For example, if I say that our probationary period of 6,000 years would break down into 120 Jubilee cycles, when is the time of the end? The last Jubilee cycle. Okay? So that would be relative to the time of the end. Right? The last Jubilee cycle, the last 50 years. That's one way you could look at it. Okay? If you're looking at it from a prophetic standpoint, right, and you have, for example, let's say that we understand, let's say for the sake of conversation, that we understand that the papal power is a player. He's one of the 7 heads in that 7-headed, 10-horned beast that John sees coming up out of the sea in Revelation. Okay, he's that head that was wounded by the sword, received that deadly wound, but was healed. Okay? So if we recognize that the papacy, through prophecy, is part of one of the end-time players, he's one of the 7 heads, the spiritual head of that beast power, the one-world system. If we understand that, is the time of the end going to start in 1798 when that papacy is receiving a deadly wound? No, because he's out of the picture. When is the time of the end going to start? When he comes back into play.
When Mussolini's
1929. Right. In 1929. So depending on what perspective you use in considering the time of the end, if you're looking at the papacy, so we got somebody back there that can count. If we're looking at the papal power, 1929 would have been the start of the time of the end when the papacy is reinserted. Okay? Not when it's receiving a deadly wound. If we're looking at the Jubilee cycle, it's got to be the last Jubilee cycle at the time of the end. So it depends on the perspective that you're coming from as to when the time of the end is. But I want you to see what Gabriel says here. He says, the vision refers to the time of the end. So now, the vision of the ram and the he-goat, right? The vision concerning the 2,300 days is at the time of the end. You following me? Okay. Look what he says here. Here's what Gabriel says in verse 19. Look, he stands him up. He's afraid. Obviously, his angels. He's afraid, but he stands him up. He looks him right in the face. They're eye to eye, and he says, "Look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation." And that's that word that Kenny was asking about, indignation there, that Hebrew word, meaning anger and wrath, meaning rabid, like a rabid animal foaming at the mouth. Okay? This is a time of fierce persecution. Well, when does that take place? At the end. Right? At the end. Somewhere in here. Right? Somewhere in here. Literally taking place. The latter time of the indignation. For at the appointed time the end shall be. And just, the Father knows, the Father already knows when He's going to make that pronouncement. He knows how much He's going to cut it short by, obviously. But that's what's going to happen. And then look at verse 20. The ram which you saw having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece, etc., etc. Well, immediately, does Gabriel not know what he's talking about here? Is Gabriel on one hand saying, look, it's going to happen right down here near the time of the end? Oh, no, wait a minute. It actually took place thousands of years ago with Medo Persia and Greece. Mm-hmm. Is Gabriel confused? Did Gabriel get the signals mixed up or something?
I don't think God makes mistakes. He sent him down there to say it.
I think that's there to really come in to just be right in our face that, wait a minute, we've got a dual representation here of the 2300 year prophecy, the 2300 day prophecy. There's a dual thing going on here. There's something that happens through history that terminates in 1844 dealing with the heavenly sanctuary, but there's also something that happens at the very end, literally 2300 days. Okay? Now there is debate. There is a debate out there that the 2300 evening mornings really means only 1150 days. Okay, so there's that debate going out there as well. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but that's also out there floating around. Right? And in some cases, we're going to have to wait and just see how the scroll unrolls.
Okay, here's
Okay.
my question.
How
Now
the scroll unrolls.
now you got me here. All right. Now you're saying this 2,300 days that belongs to us, correct? You're saying it belongs to us.
I'm saying it's present reality it will be present reality for us as well,
Okay.
just like it was for Wayne Miller.
Then do we know when a starting point for the 2,300 is?
That's why we want to focus on the daily. Okay? I think the key to understanding that is to understand what the daily is. Who takes the daily away? What is it? Anybody know?
That was the end of the daily sacrifice
Sacrificial
when
system.
Jesus was crucified.
I think it's going to be the Sabbath.
Well, let's go take a little closer look at it. Okay, I just wanted you to understand going through chapter 8 of Daniel. Well, I'll just give you another clue here. In verse 23, it says, "In the latter time of their kingdom," these are the. It says here, the large horn is between the eyes of the first king. That's broken. It turns into 4 kingdoms arise out of that nation.
Well,
And
now let's relate this to our time.
Well, in the latter time of their kingdom, these 4, when the transgressors have reached their fullness. Now, when is it that the transgressors reach their fullness?
Ever will.
It's down here,
Okay.
near the close of probation.
Okay.
Okay. Remember in Matthew 13, Jesus is telling a parable of the wheat and the tares? And, somebody bought property, and they went in and they sowed good seed, and then it started to come up, and weeds came up, and they said, "Oh, an enemy has come in and sowed weeds. Shall I go pull them out?" And what did Jesus reply?
No, let them grow together.
Let them all grow together until the harvest. And what's the harvest? The harvest is the end of the world. Okay? Harvest is the end of the world. And so, at the end of the world, what Scripture is defining here is a time when not only the tares come to the full, but also the wheat comes to the full. And how does the wheat come to the full? What's the element that brings the wheat to the full?
When it's harvest time.
Before harvest time. What brings the wheat to the full?
The latter rain.
The latter rain. Okay? And so, you got both of these groups maturing. And as we get closer to the close of probation, what's taking place? An automatic separation. Tares, wheat, both coming to the full, right? But then, what's the time such as never was that Jesus talked about? There'll come a time such as never was.
Tribulation.
That's a tribulation when full light meets full darkness. Both groups have reached full maturity. Okay? Now, obviously one group is a whole lot more than the other, because the wicked are going to be, they've taken the broad road. Right? And then you have a narrow road that the righteous have taken. But where this leads us, and actually the trumpets the sounding of the trumpets is really to alert the world that this event is about to happen. And God is trying to rescue and redeem as many as possible, trying to shake this world up so that they will make the right choice just before probation closes. That's kind of what the trumpets are all about. Right? So you've got both of these groups coming to fullness. And here, in Daniel 8, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not in his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. I mean, this is a time of severe persecution. Right? It's got to be the time of the trumpets here. The last three called the woes. The woes.
Trumpet we on.
I don't think we've seen the first one yet. I don't think the first trumpet has fallen yet. All right? The first trumpet is fire and hail, right? In Revelation chapter 8.
I think once the first one starts, I think it's just a matter of like 6-7 years probably.
The angel sounded, hail and fire followed mingled with blood, and they were thrown down to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. You think anybody will notice that?
Well,
I think somebody will notice that.
Everything's burning right now.
I think somebody will notice.
California.
Yeah, I think somebody will notice
Even
that.
Alaska's got fires everywhere.
I read a report this morning where we're supposedly in this 1,000-year weather cycle, and there's going to be a 100-year drought on the western half of the United States. It's supposed to be this severe drought for the next 100 years. Well, sorry, we don't have that much time left, so you won't have to worry about it. But
Well, scientists, they're
predicting it. But anyway, what I'm trying to point out here is that when you look at what it says, not what you've been told, not what you've studied and people have told you to believe in the past, but when you look at what it says, chapter 8 particularly places us down just in the time of the trumpets before probation closes, at the time of the end. That puts the 2300-day vision down here. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that it's not also applicable back in the 1800s, because that was present reality for the Millerites. What's present reality for us today would be 2300 days. When does it start? Who takes the daily away?
Satan.
Huh? Who takes the daily away?
Satan takes it away.
It says here that this is the vision of the he-goat and the ram and the he-goat. The male goat grew very great. This is verse 8 of chapter 8. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and its place 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Sounds just like what happened in the Grecian Empire, right? But history is being repeated. History is being repeated. There's a dual application here. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great. So this little horn here comes out of where? Comes out of one of those 4.
Between his eyes.
Right. Where does this little horn come out of? What does it say here?
Out of the head.
Out of one of them. Who's out of one of
them?
them? Out of one of the 4 Grecian, supposedly Grecian.
Is that Grecia?
Yeah.
Grecia?
Right. See, historically, we have ancient Greece with Alexander the Great, and his kingdom was divided into 4. His 4 generals.
Horns.
Ptolemy, Seleucus, Cassander.
Between his eyes.
Okay, so those 4 generals, anciently, historically, end up taking over his kingdom. Okay, but now what it says here in chapter 8 is something very similar, but it doesn't mention the Roman Empire here. It just says out of one of those 4 comes this little horn. Okay, which grew exceedingly toward the south, toward the east, toward the glorious land, Jerusalem. And it grew up to the host of heaven. It grew up to the host of heaven. Okay? And it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. What's going on there? He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. Who's the prince of the host?
Jesus.
It's Jesus. How can this little horn power exalt himself up to Christ himself?
Oh, he says he's Christ on earth.
Well, he's been forgiving people of their sins, and he's forgiven all the women of the abortions they've had.
Okay.
Now,
And it says, he exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily was taken away. Okay? So it's this little horn, identified here in chapter 8, right? It's this little horn. Go over to chapter 11.
well, the little horn is the Pope, ain't it?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's a good guess. The papacy.
No, we ain't going to be guessing. We know.
Go over to 11. Over to chapter 11 of Daniel. Right?
But yet, out of a more literal sense, though, that actually describes Satan because he took a third of the angels with him,
Right.
and ultimately he is the one behind taking away the hill.
Yeah. See now,
He
the
exalted
Pope is
himself
being
himself.
used.
Yeah.
He's a puppet. The one behind there is, I think, the one that we're actually talking about, Satan
Yeah.
himself. You see, for some reason, because we have not understood this sequence of events down here very clearly, because we throw a lot of it back in history. We throw the trumpets back in history, etc. We haven't recognized that he's going to step into the picture at some point. We have very little dialogue, very little mention of Satan's personation of Christ. And I didn't say impersonate. An impersonate, if you impersonate somebody, you're trying to sound like them, you're trying to look like them, etc. But a personation is an exact copy. And Satan is going to step into the picture himself because he knows he has a short time. And he's going to look like, sound like, act like Jesus himself. Because why? Because there are some hard cases that cannot be deceived. There's some people that he needs to get rid of. And he needs to motivate the world to get rid of them. Because his existence is at stake.
He's got the Jews all ready for it. He's got the
Evangelicals.
Everyone's
He's got
ready for it.
the whole stage has been set.
The Jews are waiting for their Messiah.
The Muslims are waiting for their imam.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got everything. All the cards are in place. All the cards are on the table, and he's ready to do this thing. He's ready to step into the game. Now, the Messiah, the Prince, had 1,260 days. He had 1,260 days of literal ministry. Do you think the enemy of God is going to not request the exact same? Don't you think he would say, you had your 1,260 days, I want my 1,260 days? And what do we find in the book of Daniel and Revelation? We find over and over and over again reference to 1,260 days, to 3.5 years, to 42 months. But we usually make an application back on some earthly power, some earthly entity. Could it be that really what John and Daniel are trying to really get across to us is that this is going to be a time so incredibly uncertain and severe because the guy that's been pulling all this nonsense is himself going to be at the helm. I mean, how are you going to talk to your neighbors and friends and try to encourage them to live according to Scripture when here is Christ supposedly himself walking around down here saying, let me tell you how it is.
Performing miracles and doing all sorts
Seeming to perform miracles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to find out if we have a starting point.
I think we can.
Okay.
I think we can. In chapter 11 of Daniel, right? Chapter 11 has been one of these chapters that talking about the king of the north and the king of the south. Just goes through the king of the north and king of the south. Okay, and I've heard people suggest this and suggest that over the years. Who's the king of the north? Who's the king of the south? And you just go back and forth and that kind of thing. Okay.
Okay,
In verse-
who is the king of the north?
In verse 29, I want you to see something here. In verse 29 of chapter 11, It says, at the appointed time. And see, whenever you see that, you got to recognize that things are happening according to the blueprint that God has set up. At the appointed time he shall return, he meaning the king of the north. This is subtitled, The Northern King's Blasphemies. At the appointed time he shall return and go toward the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For ships from Cyprus shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against who? Against the holy covenant, and do damage. So he shall return and grow and shall show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. What's going on there? What's going on there? What's the holy covenant?
10 Commandments.
The 10 Commandments. And forces shall be mustered by him, and they shall defy the sanctuary for distress, or I'm sorry, sanctuary fortress. Got a hyphen there. And forces shall be mustered by him, or gathered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, or the sanctuary of strength. It says in I think the King James. Then they shall take away the daily, and place there the abomination of desolation. So now in chapter 11 here, it's the king of the north that is taking away the daily and setting up the abomination of desolation. Now, what's the abomination of desolation?
Well, I've been bothered with that word for a long time.
What's the abomination of desolation? When General Cestius came over, Jesus in Matthew 24 was talking about, and also Luke 21, he was talking about when Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. And he told the people there, that when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, you are to what? Flee.
Flee into the mountains. Don't even come back for your coat.
Right. Now, you do recognize in Matthew 24, Jesus is mingling the destruction of Jerusalem with what other event? The destruction of the world. Okay? He's bouncing one off the other. And we're told in some of Ellen White's commentary that he's doing that because he does not want to give the disciples there. Remember, they've come to ask him, hey, when is the end going to be? When are these things going to happen? When's the temple going to be destroyed? And he is mingling these two together for their sakes, she says. He doesn't want to just blow them completely away because the temple is the whole centrality of the Jewish economy. And basically what he's saying to them is that it's going to be totally destroyed. Well, not even one stone will be left upon another. Right? So here you have in Matthew 24, Christ is painting the picture of what's going to happen. And he tells them, when you see the abomination of desolation. So when you go to Luke 21, Luke says when the armies of Rome, this would have been General Cestius, when the armies of Rome came up and circled around, stood around the city, right? That was the abomination. They were standing. This was a heathen army with their flags and their deities that they carried with them.
They was around Jerusalem.
They were standing on holy ground, and that was the signal for any Christian in the city to flee. Okay. Now
they surrounded the city, but then they had to leave.
They
right?
surround the city. Okay. The signal is given, and then I think it was Nero? Somebody. They're called back out. Cestius has every opportunity, every advantage to attack the city, but for some reason they leave.
That was their time.
3.5 years later, 1,260 days later, Titus comes marching in the spring of 70 AD. And this time, the place is destroyed. Okay? So here again, you have an example, another example with the 3.5 years of a little bit of indication that when this expires, when this time expires, that's going to be the close. That was the close of probation for that city, wasn't it? that city's probation was closed. And everybody in that was left caught in that city ended up being destroyed. And if you read the first chapter of Great Controversy, the events that took place in that city are just
Horrific.
horrific. Okay, absolutely horrific. All right. So here you have the king of the north. King of the north at the appointed time. And see, Larry, that's why I think we can pinpoint a starting place, because it's at the appointed time. He goes toward the south, and ships from Cyprus come against him, and therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he shall return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant. In other words, there's going to be pressure brought to bear on those who honor the commandments of God. And if you forsake them, you're going to be shown regard. You're going to be shown favor. Right? Oh yeah, you're doing the right thing. You're making the right choice. But then you got these hard cases that won't change. What do you have to do with them? If you can't persuade them, you can't deceive them, you have to eliminate them. You have to eliminate them. Simple as that.
So I was right then. It'd be from the time of the mandatory Sunday law.
So what's the take? Let's look at the. How much time do we have? We're
Plenty of time.
plenty of time. Okay. All right. So let's look at the daily for a minute. It seems as if the king of the north and the little horn identified in chapter 8, they seem to be tied into the papal power. The papacy being that revived head of that seven-headed beast at the end, Revelation 13. You got a one-world system. You got seven heads. The spiritual head is going to be
The little horn.
the little horn. Okay, that I think everyone probably would agree with that.
But
That's
is that
the way it's
king of the
going.
north?
That's the way it's been going for a long time. Okay, that would be the king of the north, I think. Well, actually, I would call the Pope the prince of the north. I would call Satan the king of the north. Okay,
Okay.
if you go back into Psalms, what's it? Psalm 42. Psalm 42. Well, also Isaiah. Isn't it Isaiah? Yeah, it's Isaiah 12. Let me just just a second here.
Are we just searching for King of the North?
In the sides of the north.
We just do over the north.
Oh, that's beautiful, the situation.
Yeah, that's
Mount Zion
that's-
and the sides of the north
yeah, that's
city of
Psalm 42, I think. But in chapter 14 of Isaiah, Lucifer's cut down to the ground.
14, 13.
Yeah, it says, "For I have said in my heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit in the mountain of the congregation on the furthest sides of the north." You see, that's where he's always wanted to go. And here he comes, king of the north. Right? So there's no question that the papacy is a prince. Satan is the king. Okay?
That Isaiah what?
That's Isaiah 14:13.
14, 13.
See, it's always been Satan's effort to try to usurp the authority of God. To sit, the sides of the north is the place of control, and so he wants to sit in the place of control, and that's why he's one of those seven heads in the one world system. He wants to be in control. You see, the papacy. Remember, the papacy for 1260 years, from 538 A.D. to 1798. They were in a place of control. And they were in a place of control for, from the Roman Empire on. They were in a place of control through what we call the Dark Ages in school.
Yeah, they were.
Jeremiah 1:14. Then the Lord said unto me, out of the north an evil shall break forth upon all the inhabitants of the land.
There you go.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the sides of the north has always been considered the place of control. Okay? And even in Greek mythology, Zeus, wasn't Zeus's throne in the sides of the north? Okay. So back to Daniel. I'm trying to get across to you that these prophecies have more than just an historical meaning and application. They may have a very literal present day application for us. Okay. So what's the daily? Maybe I can get some people to look up some of these.
In other words, if we can determine what the daily is and when it starts, so we know when. Okay.
You got it. You got it. Again, we're looking for a sequence. Okay, sequence of events. All right, and actually the trumpets may begin to fall even before the daily is taken away. Okay, we'll have to see how it plays out. All right. But again, we've got these numerical markers. I call them numerical markers. 2300, 1260, right? You got these numerical markers that are there. 1290, 1335 in the book of Daniel. God didn't put them in there for just to fill the page up. He put them in there so that we would have added insight. All right. Okay, let's look at the daily. The word for daily there is simply the word tamiyd. I'm just going to spell it kind of phonetically there, tamiyd. And that word has been studied, it's been debated back and forth. What does it actually mean? When you look at the other uses, it's used I think over 100 times in Scripture. Exodus 25:30, let's go there. Start there. And you know that if you're in the book of Exodus, you're up in chapter 25, you're dealing with the sanctuary, right? Exodus 25. I'll read the first one here. It says, "And you shall set the showbread." Who knows where the showbread went?
It's in the ark.
Was it in the ark or in?
Oh, it's in the on the table.
On the table in the holy place. Right. So they have a table. They got a table about like this table here.
Yeah.
Right. And they're going to put this bread on this table. These 2 stacks of 6 bread on the table. It says, "You shall set the showbread on the table before me, tamiyd." What's the word you have translated there? You have daily?
What's that? Exodus 25
It
what?
says, Exodus 25:30.
Oh,
"You shall set the showbread on the table before me, tamiyd."
mine says always.
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 Always. Okay. So they were always to have 2 stashes in the holy place, in the tabernacle. They were always to have 2 rows of showbread, right? If you read down further, Exodus 27:20, and again, these chapters are all about the sanctuary and the furniture and that kind of thing. Exodus 27:20. And this is the care of the lampstand. Now, where was the lampstand?
Opposite the showbread.
That was opposite the showbread, the table of showbread. Okay, so you got one on one side, on the one's on the right side of the entrance, and then one is on the left side of the entrance. What does verse 20 say?
And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure olive oil beaten from the light for the light, but to cause the lamp to burn always.
To cause the lamp to burn tamiyd. And mine's translated here continually. Okay? So, we're doing something, the showbread's there always. The lamp is burning continually. Right?
Was that before you go through the curtain?
Correct.
Right in front of the
That's correct. Right. These are in the holy place, as opposed to in the most holy. In chapter 28, verses 29 and 30. Chapter 28, still in Exodus. Exodus 28, 29 and 30 says, "So Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplate of judgment over his heart." So the high priest, one of the high priest's garments was a breastplate, held on, was hinged up here by 2 hinges. And in the breastplate here you had stones, precious stones. 3 four rows of 3 or 4 of 3, is 12 of them on the breastplate there. It says, Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastplate of judgment over his heart when he goes into the holy place as a memorial before the Lord tamiyd, before the Lord continually. And you shall put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. So Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel over his heart before the Lord tamiyd, continually. Okay? So you start to get the picture here that tamiyd means continual, always. Again, as you read further through Exodus, you see this over and over again. In Exodus 29:38, look at 29:38. I'm just skipping some of them that I have listed there, but you get the impression here. This is the daily offerings. Now here's one of the scriptures that people use. This is one of the reasons why they put in that supplied word sacrifices. Is Exodus 29:38. Now this is what you shall offer on the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day tamiyd, continually. Okay?
Jared?
Yeah.
Scott is commenting the table of showbread was on the north side of the tabernacle,
Right.
with the lampstand on the south.
South. Yep. Absolutely. Appreciate that. The entrance was on the east, and then you had the different components there.
The entrance to the
Tabernacle.
tabernacle is always on the east side.
On the east. Right.
Okay.
Right. So you had the entrance into the courtyard was on the east, and then if you went straight forward, then you had the entrance to the tabernacle, right there also. Okay. A lot of symbolism in all of that. The one thing that was definitely at play in the tabernacle service was the tamiyd, was the continual application of all these things. In fact, Exodus 30 and verse 8. Exodus 30 and verse 8. Aaron shall burn, this is verse 7, Aaron shall burn it on sweet incense every morning when he tends the lamps, and he shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps at twilight, he shall burn incense on it, a tamiyd, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations. So, what does tamiyd mean?
Continual.
It means continual, perpetual, always, right? Throughout Leviticus, we find, of course, similar things here. Leviticus 6:13, it shall be, shall ever, dealing with the law of burnt offerings. The law of grain offerings, it was a perpetual offering. Continually in Leviticus 24:3 and 4, the golden lamps burning the oil. Numbers 4:16, there was a daily meat offering. And again, these are places where the word tamiyd is used. Numbers 9:16, always, it says there. The cloud covering the tabernacle when encamped. When the Israel was encamped, there was a cloud that would cover the tabernacle. Deuteronomy 11:12 talks about going into the promised land. That was a promise that was always before the people. 1 Chronicles 16:11, seek the Lord and His strength. How often? Continually. Tamiyd. Okay? Seek the Lord and His strength tamiyd, continually. Psalm 34:1 talks about continual praise. Loving kindness and truth continually preserve me. So, worship is continual. Prayer. What does the New Testament tell us? Pray without ceasing. Okay. Psalm 51:3, ever mindful of our transgressions. These are things that God wants us to continually think about. Psalm 71:14, I will hope tamiyd, continually. Hope is something that we should never lose. Okay. Seek him face to face continually, Psalm 105. Psalm 119:44, keep the law, tamiyd, continually. Okay? Bind them continually, tamiyd, upon thy heart, Proverbs 6:21. So you can just keep going on and on and on with these different references to the word tamiyd. What does it mean? Perpetual, continual, always, ever before. Okay? So what's being taken away? That's the daily. The daily is this continual, this perpetual thing that's there, that's being taken away. All right? What could it be?
The fourth commandment.
What could it be? I think Larry's on the right track. I would suggest to you.
Pray daily.
I would suggest to you that
Daniel got in trouble for praying daily.
when we get down to here, and this division is taking place, right? What's the division concerning? You got some people that are following truth. Some people are following
Tradition.
error and tradition. So the choice is the tradition of men or the law of God. Okay? And so where does Satan, where does he have to bring people before this time here? When he shows up, what is his effort? What is he showing up to do? To convince people what?
Change the rules.
That he changed that the law is different than what these fanatics believe it to be. It's different than what the Word says that it is. You know.
But the reason I keep saying the Sabbath is simply for the fact that Satan does not care whether you keep the other 9. He could not care less one way or the other.
Right, but the Sabbath.
It's the fourth commandment. The Sabbath is what he's against.
Right, no, that's the issue. That's the issue that puts you on one side or the other.
Sabbath
Okay.
is God's seal.
That's the issue that puts you on one side or the other. But the Sabbath is one day a week. It's not continuous. It's not perpetual. It's not 7 days a week. It's just one day a week. It's a special day. Okay? But the law of God is
Keep it
perpetual.
continuously.
The law of God is continual.
I can see
The law of God is always. The law of God will never end. Okay? And so, but he comes along, the little horn comes along, the king of the north comes along and says, in order to justify the world, we're talking about the whole going in a certain direction, he has to come along and say, the law is different than what you think it is. And the issue becomes spiritualism. The issue becomes Sabbath Sunday. Okay? And the issue is, I've abrogated, I've changed it. When I died on the cross, I changed it. I changed the law, etc. Not realizing, and of course our response to that is, the fact that Jesus had to die on the cross is proof that the law could not be changed. God said the wages of sin is death. Okay? Eternal death. And so that's why Christ had to forfeit something eternal. His omnipresence.
Sacrifice.
His omnipresence, eternally. It's just interesting. I just wrote an email the other day. Somebody sent to me from Australia. And people are starting to get it. They're starting to understand that, when Jesus died on the cross, he not only died human death, but he gave up his omnipresence. They're starting to get people around the world are starting to understand. You see?
That'd be a perfect sacrifice, and he's the only one who could do it.
Perfect sacrifice and an eternal sacrifice. Perfect sacrifice from his human nature, eternal sacrifice from his divine nature. That's unbelievable. But at any rate.
I think the Pope's going to show up here this month.
Okay, so you were saying, we're looking for a sequence here of events. The first trumpet. You think we'll notice when trees are being destroyed, when grass is being destroyed on a global scale?
Oh,
I think we'll notice. Okay.
But I don't think it's... Well, wait a minute. Let's think about this for a second. Now, when this occurs, I don't think it's going to be overnight. I think it's going to take a period of time. Like you were just talking earlier about the drought for the West.
This 1,000 years.
Yeah, yeah. So you see, it could
They're
take
already
time for
dry.
all the grass to die.
Yeah.
It could take time for all the trees to die.
Yeah.
See, I just don't think
Well,
we
we
have
have
sort
kind
of
of massive solar flare activity that, created just a really hot spell for a short period of time that could kill vegetation.
If we didn't have any numerical markers in Daniel and Revelation, I would say there's no way to calculate a sequence of events. Okay, but because those numbers are there, okay. In fact, in Daniel even uses the word for one of the personages mentioned there as the wonderful numberer. Okay, so I mean, God knows exactly what we're going to need to survive this, and this actually, because once this occurs, none of God's people will be at risk of death, but we will be suffering privation and.
But
And-
those plagues are really meant to fall on the
Yes,
wicked.
of course. Yeah. There's no need for any to fall on. I mean, this is just God's wrath being poured out, and the
Right.
mercy is no longer pleading.
Similar to how the children of Israel didn't have any of the plagues falling on them, for the most part.
Yes, very similar to the Egyptian plagues. Okay, they're saying. So the daily, in my opinion, the daily seems to be the law of God. And when Satan shows up, which is under the fifth trumpet is when he is presented as kind of stepping into our reality and saying, I'm here to get business done.
So in other words, you're saying the 2,300 days would be from the time that he announces
time that
himself
the law-
as Christ.
that the law is set aside. Because remember, look,
But
what's
it's
the
not going to be set aside until he steps in.
Yeah, well, it could be maybe even a little before that.
Okay.
And then he comes to validate that.
Okay.
People in the world, governments in the world, the Pope, for example, in this one world system, hey, we've got to do this. I'm the spiritual head, so we've got to go this direction. So he may say, okay, Sunday's going to be our day. And when they legislate that, you're setting aside the law of God and you're legislating it. Well, what that's going to do, and we know that legislation will become more severe as time goes on for God's people. Till finally, what's the ultimate? A death decree. You won't follow, we're going to get rid of you.
Then
Okay?
it will be from the time of the doing away with mandatory Sunday law.
Yes, but it'll be, yes. I mean, that's going to be the trigger.
Okay.
That's going to
Gotcha.
definitely be the trigger.
I see it.
Okay. So you've got this this daily being taken away, what I would call just the law of God being abrogated, and by the little horn, by the king of the north, okay, which I see the king of the north as Satan himself, prince of the north as being the papacy, that kind of thing. But at any rate, it will tell us that would be what, like whether it's 1100 in whether it's 2300 or 1150 actual days. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Some people are adamant about the 1150, some are adamant about the 2300. The original just says evening mornings. 2300 evening mornings. Some people divide that in half, and some people say, no, that's 2300 evenings and 2300 mornings. And some people divide it in half. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, but it is going to be a severe time. God's people will be trodden underfoot, as it says.
Well, if it's 2,300 days,
That's 6 years.
6 years, 110 days.
6 years and 20 weeks. 6 years and 20 weeks is what it is.
110 days. All right.
That's based on a 360-day year.
Mine was 365.
So I'm basing it on the times, the biblical years.
So even though, I think I might be leaning toward the evenings and the mornings, the 1150, simply for the fact it's going to come out to be 3.5 years. Or pretty close to it.
It could be. It could be. Let me share something with you. There's another in Daniel chapter 12. Now, I want you to understand too, when you're reading, we were in 11 there, we're talking about the king of the north, and about he will be grieved and you turn in a rage against the Holy Covenant, etc. You read down through to the end of that chapter. He shall plant his tents and his palaces between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end and no one will help. And the very next words are, at that time, Michael shall stand up. What's the standing up of Michael?
That means it's over.
Standing up of Michael is the close of probation. That's when mercy no longer is pleading in the sanctuary above. Okay? So at the time that the king of the north is taking the daily away, just at that same time period, you've got, at that time, Michael shall stand up. You've got probation and is going to end up being closed. When Daniel goes back, now Daniel is asking questions. As you go through chapter 12, Daniel's still not comprehending all this. And God says, Daniel, shut up the words, seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, knowledge shall increase, knowledge in the prophecies. So Daniel then looked, and there stood two others, one on this riverbank and one on the other riverbank. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? So now we're back to a time period, aren't we? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and this is also Revelation chapter 10, if you're kind of keeping up. Same thing is going on in Revelation chapter 10. Swear by him who lives forever, that this shall be for a time, times, and half. Well, that's what? That's 1,260 days, right? So here's this 3.5 year period again that's coming into focus, right? When the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. So remember, you talked earlier about God's people being trodden underfoot and ravaged. Here he's talking about them being shattered, completely shattered. Although I heard, I did not understand, Daniel says. Then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly. None of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So apparently there'll be the daily taken away, and there'll be a period of 1,290 days, or could be a period of 1,290 days between the setting up of the abomination of desolation and the taking away of the daily. So there could be a legislation take place, then a couple of years later, Sunday is actually set up as the standard for worship. So you can read this two ways. From the time that the daily is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. But Daniel, go your way till the end. You shall rest and you shall rise in your inheritance at the end of days. So, again, there's time periods that are built into this. Once we see the triggers, once we see the taking away of the daily, and that may happen just completely through legislative enactment, okay, then we can start the count. We can keep track of how long. You got to remember, Satan has everything to lose and everything to gain here. He cannot allow for one person following the truth to be left standing. And so he's going to have to be pretty convincing to get an entire world arrayed against people that have a different opinion about something. You realize what I'm saying there? Do you realize that people will come to you and say, we want to kill you because you're not like us? And my response would be, because I believe something, because I like red and you like blue, you want to kill me? Because I have a different opinion about something, you want to kill me? Does that make any sense? It doesn't make a bit of sense. If we were out there stealing and raping and maiming and burning people's homes down, oh yeah, then you got to take action. But because I have a different opinion? because I've studied something and come to a different conclusion than you? You want to kill me? Does that even make any sense? Yet the devil is going to have to take the world, he's going to have to take the world, their minds captive, to bring them to that place where they can say, I want to get rid of you because you have a different opinion about something.
Ain't that what's happened?
That's kind of what's happening now.
People are
It is. ISIS is going around where killing all them people and running them out. They are killing
Isn't
them
that
because they
absurd,
don't think
though?
they wait.
Isn't that the height of absurdity? I mean, think about that. And like you're saying, people are being conditioned in their thinking
It's going to spread.
to say